I think that Common Core standards without Common Core supports mean absolutely nothing. And changing the dynamics that we want to change in many of the communities across the country. So when we talk about, well, what are those supports? A lot of them are what the Senator outlined. But for me, it also starts with what do the students and parents identify as the supports. I've been to a lot of schools in different communities across the country, and most students and parents start at the point of understanding that I am going to be in a safe and embracing and nurturing environment. And to the degree that we don't have an accountability system that accounts for that at all, we may miss the students and we may miss the parents. And if you miss them, it's going to be that much more difficult to engage them in those other things that we like. So it started right there. And I think that going from there, we have to begin to ask the question, now, what are the wraparound supports? Because our educational system, particularly our public educational system, has been and is currently charged with addressing many of the poverty issues that confront our communities. And I think we've got to ask ourselves the question, should the schools just own that? Because they've been doing it for so long. The number of students who are coming to school not having eaten breakfast, the number of students who are coming to school with the need for more mental supports. Should the schools own this? And if so, how do we build that in our accountability system to ensure that they have the wraparound supports? So yes, let's get to those academic pieces, but let's also ensure that they have, as well as the academic, whether those be tutoring, extended day learning, the socio-emotional, but also finally, let's ensure that they have the health supports necessary to provide them an opportunity to learn. Because in so many communities, we can identify the health challenges which serve as barriers to a student's opportunity to learn. Asthma, eyesight, mental health. So our accountability system has to be robust enough to take on these things, because we believe that our schools, our public educational system, is probably our country's best anti-poverty vehicle. Those of us who really want to move this issue, we've got to begin to think about what is our on-the-ground local and state strategy. So to the degree that California is further along, it may not be where we want it to be, but it's further along than in a number of other places. Where are the other places and spaces where we can move this until this becomes a part of our normal structure? So normalize it to impact the national movement. So in one part, I'm saying, yes, let's go with a local and state strategy until we normalize resource accountability. But on the other side, this is not going to happen absence of some level of a stronger role and equity at the federal level. Simply because in many of the states, you don't have the capacity necessary to implement any type of accountability system, whether we're talking about resource accountability, Common Core standards. If you look at the capacity of many state departments of education, in some states you're talking 2 to 3 staffers. And until we address that, I don't think it's reasonable to think that you can operationalize a system that Richard just outlined. And I think California has more capacity than most states. But when you begin to get to Mississippi, when you begin to get to a number of the southern states, we have to really look at how do we build the capacity there. And short of some level of federal resourcing, I don't know how we do that. And if we don't do that, we're saying that these students in the South won't have an opportunity to learn, but for no other reason being born in a poor southern state. So I think the federal government has to identify what's going to be its role in building that capacity. When I was in the Clinton administration, I know that there were 12 regional equity assistance centers. And I would be interested in understanding, and we should all check, what is the status of these regional equity centers right now? What is the resourcing level, and how are they interacting with the states and localities to implement these equity plans? So yes, it's about building a state and local movement with the people, with the students, grassroots advocates, grass tops advocates, but it's also holding the federal government accountable for doing what we said that we are, connecting our resources so that we are united in states and united in opportunity. our challenge, if we care about equity, has to be reaching into the gaps, the gray areas. And I think Tom is right. We can't do this through litigation. Linda knows I say this all the time. Every state has a case like they have a state bird, whether it's Williams in California, whether it's CFE in New York, DeRalph 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Ohio. So yes, litigation is a tool, but it was never meant to be the only tool. We've got to use legislation, litigation, negotiation, and hear me right, agitation. Sometimes we discredit those parents and students who agitate, but they have to be on our team also, and we've got to join their team too. You know, I said at the NAACP last month that the NAACP should forever have a line item in their budget that says bail money. Right? If we care about these issues, and you got to, in your state, as we're pulling together our coalition, identify the organizations that have the bail money line item and identify how we're going to support those organizations, because that's how we got to so many of the opportunities that we got now, not just by following the law or filing a lawsuit to challenge the law, but when Rosa Parks sat down on that bus, she was breaking the law. So how do we get to break some laws to get to a better, more just law is the question. And I know that's not a comfortable question in DC, but I think we've got to put that on the agenda.